you. Welcome, everyone. Welcome. We're so glad that you're here and able to join us tonight. We're just pausing here for just a few seconds while we let folks get in and get settled. As you know, you can choose on Zoom if you're watching and not just joining by phone. You can choose to use the speaker view so that every time somebody speaks, you're just seeing them on your screen. But if you prefer gallery view, of course, you're welcome to do that too. But you'll find that button at the top usually of your screen where you can choose the kind of view that you prefer. We are really, really glad you're here. Shay, I don't know if you can hear me. I can't see the indicator for my screen share. Are you still seeing the screen that you're supposed to be seeing? You're on mute. Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Yes, sorry,
Usually,
I muted myself.
no, it's fine. I just, for some reason, usually it like lights up for me and it isn't. So I just wanted to double check before I get started. All right. Well, we'll go ahead and get started as people are coming in. We're really, really glad you're here. I just want to be mindful of your time too. But thank you for coming. We're here to talk about including our kids in their IEP meetings and how we can do that. And we've got a creative team of panelists here with me tonight to talk with us about how they've done it in the past and to brainstorm ideas with us and hopefully give us a lot of suggestions for how that might work. As we're getting to know each other a little bit and get settled, I just want to invite you to open up your chat if you're willing to do that. And I think it's always good. You all, those of you who've been with me on webinars before know that I love the word glimmer. I'm always looking for like the little specks of light in what otherwise can get to be sometimes dark days for all of our families, especially during this pandemic. So I would just want to invite you to introduce yourself in the chat. We'd love to know that you're here. And then if you're willing to answer this question, what's a glimmer in your child's life this year or your children's lives so far this year? Would love to just hear what you're celebrating. Maybe it's something small, something funny they said, some huge accomplishment. Maybe they're feeling better. I don't know what it is, but I just want to start by celebrating the good news. Some of you know I'm a professor at Bridgewater State University, and I start every class since the pandemic with what's the good news? And we spend 5 minutes sharing our good news stories with each other. So it's how I get to hear about new cousins being born and, the baby kitten and all the fun things. So please join me in sharing some of your own glimmers tonight. And again, welcome. While we're also getting started, I just want to let you know that Inclusion Matters is hosting an event pretty much every month during this school year. And we are really looking forward to our event, which is exactly a month from now, basically same date, but in March, same time, also on Zoom. And if you haven't had a chance to ever hear Brennan Sisirikun, he is wonderful. He's hilarious. And he's someone your children should hear. So if you've got kids, middle schoolers, high schoolers, he just has a wonderful way of talking about disability and inclusion that I think everybody needs to hear. So I hope you'll come back in a month and mark your calendars and join us. We'd love to have you. All right, let's go ahead and get started a little bit with tonight's presentation. And thanks for these posts and chats. I'm seeing performances and this is great. Wonderful. Love it, love it, love it. All right, so this is my daughter, Mariah. This was her on her first day of school this past year. She's 12, now 12 and a half, and in 6th grade. She's partially included in our school district's 4th, 5th, and 6th grade. And I just want to tell you a little bit about her disability so that as I talk a little bit about how we've included her in her IEP meetings, you have some sense of our context. So Mariah has Down syndrome and autism. She's always had an IEP, as you can imagine. We are an early intervention family from the time she was, I think, 3 weeks old, and went right from early intervention into the school district. Mariah's not our family's first kiddo with an intellectual disability, nor our family's hence, I guess, first kiddo with an IEP. So we've been at this for a long time. Our oldest son is now almost 26. So we've been doing IEPs for a long, long time in our family. And it occurred to me somewhere along the line as I was working with my son and others, that with my daughter as well, and then just in my own work, I was a high school teacher, that we needed to do a better job at including children in their IEP meetings, and that we weren't always doing that, right? We were doing a lot of talking about kids and talking about our children and not actually letting them speak up for themselves, or in whatever way they can be a participant and to join. So we kind of started thinking together as a family about what would that look like? What does it look like? What does inclusion look like? First of all, for us, inclusion looks a lot of ways. We don't limit it to like a particular placement or setting, right? We know from the research in special education that inclusion has a lot to do with a sense of belonging. Here's some ways we've tried to make it work. On the left there, in school, I think this was third grade, I want to say. What I love about that photo, my kiddo's face is the one kind of like in the middle where you can't see barely any of her body. I love that photo because it's like you could almost miss it, right? Like almost miss that there's a kid with Down syndrome in the mix there. It's just one of my favorite photos of her at school ever. On the right, what you're seeing is our daughter Mariah, kind of at the top left of the photo in the yellow shirt, yellow sleeve shirt with the white stripe. And you're seeing her there at what we call Mariah's Circle. Mariah's Circle is a group of her typical peers and some of the people in her life who know and love her the best. And we're just trying to get an early head start on what many of you know as supported decision making, and trying to help her begin to think of her life in terms of having a circle of people around her that care for her, guide her. She can bounce ideas off of, have people to ask advice from, and make decisions. So pre-pandemic, we were meeting on every couple months. We've done a few meetings on Zoom since, and hope to get back to something more regular and in person since then. But those are some ways we've tried to create some ramps so that as Mariah is included in her IEP meeting, she's got lots of context for inclusion. So these are a couple photos from fourth grade. You can tell it's pre-pandemic. Look at all those people with no masks. Isn't it just, it's a marvel. Remember those days? So you can see there Mariah sort of at the front of the room. She's made a slideshow that she's sharing with her team and talking through, I think that particular slide says what I like at my school, basically. And I talked through and just read the slides to them, what she likes about school. And on the next slide, what she didn't like about school. These were some of our earliest forays into getting her involved in her IEP meeting. And I'll share with you actually another example in a few minutes as well of a way that we've done that. One of the things that's true for my kiddo, it's probably true for yours. She needs what I call on ramps. She needs, sometimes I say, long on ramps for things. So what I mean by that is she just needs lots of opportunities to practice something before it actually happens, right? I know a lot of you are familiar with this, right? We give our kids social stories. That's an on-ramp, right? We, make accommodations for them or put things in chunks, right? And kind of chunk a task all the way through until they finish the project. I have found the same to be true of including Mariah in her IEP meetings. I can't just be like, hey, we're going tomorrow to your IEP meeting and expect her to just kind of show up and know what to do. I really have to start weeks ahead of time with a process that kind of on-ramps her to the IEP meeting. So here's a couple of my suggestions for what effective on-ramp design might look like. The first is to make sure we're designing around our kids' strengths. It's so important. We're not trying to get our kids to do something that they hate. We're looking to find their strengths and capitalize on those. So Mariah really loves to bake. So now she's the baker for the IEP meeting. She bakes something and she brings it to the IEP meetings. I have to say it puts all the teachers in a lovely mood, which is great. And but the real reason we do it is because we want her to have a role in the meeting and showing up with baked goods, passing them out. It seems like a simple thing, but it's a way that she feels included and a part of things. Our children can read aloud something that they've created, right? Some schoolwork. They can bring a craft. They can bring in something from home that's important to them, show off an experiment or some project, bring photos, bring their athletic medals, bring a video from their drama performances that their teachers didn't get to see. We want to design around their strengths and really feature their strengths. I think many parents feel, and rightly so, that the IEP is so much about deficits, right? And about shoring up and accommodating deficits. And what we want to do, I think, in our meetings with our kids is say, look, our kids have tons of strengths and you don't get to see them all in school. So let's make sure this is our opportunity to feature them and our kids' opportunity to shine. The second strategy is to design a process. So we want to involve our kids in preparing for the meeting, choosing how they want to be a part of it, if they're able to do that, choosing their slideshow backgrounds, right? Mariah has an IEP meeting next week. The slideshow background she chose, it just sends me over the edge. It's like the craziest thing I've ever seen, but it's the one she loves. So we're going to go with glitters and rainbows and sparkles because that's what she wants. So let them make as many choices as they can. And just like with everything, many of us know with our kids, depending on their disability, that sometimes they just need extra time. So we start preparing for our IEP meetings, as I mentioned, usually weeks ahead of time. We also rehearse. So as part of our design process, I give Mariah an opportunity to rehearse before she goes. I'll show you in a second an example. Mariah actually has selective mutism as one of her diagnoses. So when she gets anxious, she's unable to speak. After that fourth grade meeting, whose pictures we captured, she's never really spoken at an IEP meeting again. And so what we've taken to doing, instead of kind of putting this huge spotlight on her and knowing that this is going to be an anxiety producing moment, she now records whatever she's created, slides or whatever. She records it on Zoom and we bring the recording in, she presses play and we watch her talk through her slides that way. And I'll show you an example of that in just a minute. But design that process. What's the process? The third thing is designing on-ramps to the on-ramps. You want to provide ways for your child to practice some of the skills, or like I said, even just the presentation itself to others before the IEP meeting. So on the earlier slide, I showed you a picture of Mariah's circle, her friends and other people in her life, adults in her life. That has provided a really good forum. So Mariah would create her IEP presentation or whatever it is, and then she would show it to her circle first, around our dining room table where it's much lower stakes and much more familiar before she went to the IEP meeting. So sometimes we need on-ramps for the on-ramps, at least we do in our family. And then finally, I have a rule of thumb that I have always used for everything with Mariah, which is it's always got to be positive and it's always got to be fun. You have to make sure that your kid is enjoying getting ready for their IEP meeting. It's not a homework assignment. It's not something we should be screaming about, at our children, like, you got to get this done. It's tomorrow. No, at least for my kid, that just leads to shut down. So we always stop before frustration level. Literally the other day, we came up to start the one for next week. Mariah picked her slides and then she just stared at the screen. I said, oh, are you all done? And she said, yeah, I'm done. I'm like, okay, cool. Literally, what was that? Like 30 seconds. Yay, great job. Good job picking those slides. And we left, right? Just stop before frustration. Do it in bite-sized chunks. It's not about the product. right? It's not about the product. To me, it's about the process. It's not about what the team sees. It's about what my kid learns in this process. And of course, what I'm hoping she learns the most is that she is super important to her team and is a super, super integral part to that team. So I thought I'd just share with you a quick video. This is the video she made for last year's IEP meeting. And it cracks me up because she's like super distracted and just so her. Again, just to say, we're not looking for perfection, right? We're not looking for a lovely product. We're just looking for our kids to have a space to be included. So I'll play this for you.
Hey.
She's watching the cat.
I am Mariah. I in fifth grade. IEP Meeting, Wednesday, February 24, 2021. I am smart, loud, certified, co-fabulous. I can do hard things like make popcorn by myself. I let me books, play baseball and basketball. With better and my dog and cat. When I grow up, I will go to high school and Winchell State University. I want to be a dentist and a doctor and a baker and a builder. I am going to build my new house. I will love my with my brother Jackson. I can marry. I want to marry Jack. Say, Daddy, Mom, and Dad can visit me. I will cook a special supper. I want to learn to drive a car with bigger bucks like 200 million. Bake cookies all by myself. So I can stand in a pool. Jump into a pool. School is school. My favorite thing about school is I am my normal car. This is my journal. I love new car.
Chicken wings. Okay. Can you read the next one to me?
We need 8 of 2.
We need 8 of 2s, but can you read it? How do we read it? 2.
2 multiply, repeat 8.
2 repeat 8. Good job. 4. Good job. Nice job. So I'm going to show your Numicon board here if I can figure out how to do that. Yep. All right. Can you count those?
2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12.
What comes after 12?
Forget it.
Keep counting. 12. If you don't know, 13.
13, 14, 15, 16.
2 repeat 8 is 16. Excellent job.
Yummy Pokemon, yummy, yummy. Okay, I'll enter that. Okay, I'm gonna go for my IEP meeting. Bye.
She exits that better than I do when I when I play videos. Awesome. All right. So just to say a couple things about outcomes for our own kids and what I hope Mariah gets out of it. Let me see if I can, sorry about that, make this big again. There we go. So some things I've noticed as we've included Mariah over the years, she's definitely learning interdependence, which I think is such an important skill for every human in the world. If this is not the takeaway of the pandemic right now, I don't know what the heck. We've been in a pandemic for 2 years. But if we aren't learning, we're more connected than we realized. And I want Mariah to have a healthy sense of interdependence, right? That she needs people, that she has a team of people who love her and support her and have her best interests in mind. Also, I've noticed a real increase in self-awareness. Mariah is a kid that struggled for a long time to even use I pronouns, right? And would kind of speak about herself in third person. And so this whole process for her of learning to become self-aware and self-reflective, this has really given her a wonderful way and given me a way to help her with some of those skills. Increasing her self-advocacy. I love when she puts together an IEP slide about what she doesn't like at school, for example, and just being able to say, right, to her teachers, I don't like such and such class, right? Or this is hard for me, right? That's exactly great. Like, that's what I want. I want you to be that kid that tells people, and that woman, right, that tells people what you don't like and don't want. And then so many other increased skills, I think, as you no doubt can see just even from that video, just the embedded academic skills, social skills, executive function
Oh, I
skills.
have email receipt. Yeah, I just remembered. Thank you.
Thank you. Can you mute if you're not on mute? Would you mind please muting yourself? Thank you so much. Yeah, so there's just so many skills that I think are embedded depending on what our kids choose to do in their IEP meetings. Just so many skills that they learn along the way as they plan that out and kind of, become a part of that process. So my part of the presentation is over. We're going to kind of move over to our panelists, but if you're wanting to ask questions, please feel free to post them in chat. We'll have some time for some Q&A at the end as well. But if you also want to reach out or join our mailing list so that you hear about upcoming events, our Inclusion Matters email is there as well. So with that, I want to just take a couple minutes. We're going to transition over to welcoming our panelists tonight. So I invited a group of people that I just am so excited to hear from myself. And I figured if I want to hear from them, you're going to want to hear from them. So first, I want to introduce you to Diana Wiley. Diana Wiley is a mom to 2 boys in 5th and 8th grades. She's a graduate of the Family Leadership Series. Many of you are familiar with the Family Leadership Series. Diana is retired from the Department of Corrections, became a registered nurse, and is currently a stay-at-home mom. Diana has years of experience with both her children's IEPs and 504 plans, including for disabilities like executive function, ADHD, intellectual disability, expressive receptive communication disorder, ADHD, PANS, PANDAS, and most recently POTS. Both of her sons have participated in their IEP meetings for years. Welcome to Marie Blackburn as well. Marie Blackburn has been empowering women on Cape Cod and the surrounding areas to be the change in their communities for many years. Known as the Connector, she's utilized her skills to become the visionary and event planner of Driven Cape Cod's Conference for Women, comprising conferences, retreats, and celebratory events in honor of the accomplishments of women. Marie uses her platform to host Driven Women TV, Conversations That Matter, and a Facebook page titled Let Me Tell You a Story. Marie is a social justice advocate, particularly of inclusion for people with diverse abilities, such as her 17-year-old son, Chase, who has Down syndrome. Marie works with agencies such as DDS, KDC, Mass Families, and the Federation for Children with Special Needs on a myriad of projects and events. And finally, I want to introduce you to our third panelist, Amanda Bailey. Amanda Bailey is a family support specialist at the Asperger Autism Network, where she assists parents and family members of children, teens, and young adults to age 22 through IEP reviews and parent coaching. She frequently presents on autism and the IEP and runs workshops for caregivers of newly diagnosed children and teens. Her background is in family leadership development through the Mass Families Northeast region, coordinating the Advocacy Bootcamp program and assisting with the Family Leadership Series. She is a COPAA and Federation trained special education advocate. Amanda has co-chaired the Acton-Boxborough CPAC for 8 years since her oldest son transitioned out of early intervention. So as you can see, we've got a wealth of expertise in this Zoom room tonight. So I'm really just so grateful that you all are here, and I'm going to stop sharing my screen so that we can see our panelists. Again, just a reminder, I will spotlight our panelists, but also in the upper right of your Zoom screen, you'll see a view button. And if you click on that button and move it to speaker view, every time a new person speaks, that'll be the person that you see on your screen so that you're not trying to scan through a gallery of people to find who's speaking. So I'm going to ask some questions and give each of our panelists an opportunity to respond this evening, and then we'll leave some time, hopefully 10 minutes tonight, for questions. If you have questions, please feel free to post them at any time in the chat. We won't stop at necessarily at that time to answer them, but we are keeping track of them, and we'll come back to them during our Q&A. So the first question, and we're going to start with Amanda. Our first question for all of our panelists is to tell us about your child or children who have IEPs. Of course, you can mention the others too, their diagnoses, and when in their schooling career they first received an IEP. So Amanda, we'll start with you.
Thanks, Melissa. So my older son is 11 and he's in the 5th grade now. He's very into Dungeons and Dragons. That is his jam. And he's an incredibly loyal friend. He plays basketball. My younger son is 7 and he's in the 2nd grade. His passion is natural disasters, which very much fits his personality. They're both autistic, and I use the identity first language rather than person with autism. I say autistic because that's what they prefer. They received medical diagnoses very early. So my older son was diagnosed just at 2, and then my younger son was diagnosed at 13 months because we knew what we were looking at. So they transitioned out of early intervention and qualified for IEPs at 3 through our district's early childhood program. So it seems like we've been doing this forever. And the team keeps rotating. I have the same cast of characters year after year. They're currently in full inclusion placements with push-in support and some straight pullouts here and there.
Thank you. Diana.
Hi, I'm Diana. I have 2 boys, 11 and 14. We're an adoptive family. So they both came to me through DCF. My 11-year-old is actually in the process of transferring off of an IEP and onto a 504. So he didn't qualify. He just had his 3-year eval. But my oldest son is 14. He's in the 8th grade. And he has a laundry list of diagnoses. He's been on IEP since basically, actually it started actually before he was 3, because like others have said, he was in early intervention, and he has a summer birthday. So they wanted to do all of his testing before the end of the school year. And so he got his IEP before he was 3, and then he started school in September. And he's now 14 and in the 8th grade. So we're working with an intellectual disability, an expressive receptive communication disorder, PANS/PANDAS, POTS, ADHD. He actually, I mean, the kid you see on paper is not the child that you meet. He actually seems to function much higher than what it looks, unless it involves language. That seems to be his biggest, everything about language, word finding, articulation, reading, writing, everything about language is extremely difficult for him. But his passion is basketball, and he's good. Proud mom moment, but he is talented in that in athletics, but specifically basketball. And he's been participating in his, oh no, never mind. That's the next question. I'm not going to jump ahead. He is in a separate classroom for ELA, math, and they have a study skills class. And then he does go into he is in with the regular, I'm not sure what the right wording is, but the regular typical kids for right currently it's science and some computer graphing something or other. I don't really know. He just changed. It's a new term. And he's supposed to have support, but like everywhere else, he's supposed to be in those classrooms with a para, but he has not had that support all year because they don't have the staffing for it. I'm not thrilled. He's loving the independence of it all. And so far it's been moderately successful. So I'm not making a big to-do about the lack of para support in the classroom. And I think that was pretty much it.
Thank you, Diana.
Oh.
Marie. You are muted, Marie.
Okay, typical. I'm Marie Blackburn, and my son Chase Bradford Younger Blackburn, 26 letters. That's a big name. I thought for a big life. Chase's name means strong and manly, abundant provider, and his name was defined before he was born. And we kind of walk into his name. So Chase is a happy, very, very social, loving young man. He's 17 years old, and he is in the 11th grade at Mashpee Middle High School. His passion is for cheeseburgers, all things good, food. He comes from a family of chefs and event planners, and his biggest passion is music and musical theater. So Chase, what he can't say, he can sing. He can sing the score to any musical and all the words in the play, but he struggles with just regular everyday language, you know, having a conversation. He has good receptive ability, but getting it out is difficult. But like I said, he can communicate. He can get his point across. So yeah, so he communicates. He's very much a connector, like his mother. Very well known, you know, in the community, and pretty much everywhere he goes, he brings joy and love to the situation. He doesn't have any other diagnosis that to speak of. You know, he has Down syndrome and the things that come with that. You know, some speech, he has speech and OT and PT in school, and we continue to work on those skills just to help him to be successful in the things that he loves. He's very good at sports. He's connected to Kennedy Donovan and to Special Olympics. He bowls on a weekly basis and plays basketball, and he swims very well. He loves boating. And this year he learned to ride a bike during the pandemic, one of those large tricycles. So, you know, he gets exercise that way.
Oh, that's great. Thank you, Marie, so much. I appreciate that. All right, our second question for our panelists this evening is, how did you first come up with the idea to include your child in their IEP meetings? And if you can remember, how old were they when they first started participating in their IEP meetings? So we'll just kind of go in the same order. So Amanda, do you want to start?
Sure. So I think it was either a basic rights workshop through the Federation or the Parent Consultant Training Institute through the Federation, so the advocacy training, where the notion first came up that kids don't have to wait until 14 to be part of their teams. to be part of the IEP discussion. And it didn't fully dawn on me why that was important until I heard a self-advocate speak at a Mass Families event. And he shared, this young man, that he only learned that this team of adults had been talking about him that whole time at 14 when he was invited to the table, and how awful that felt. And I went, whoa, because if that's ever my older son, he would never recover from that. He just would not be able to recover from that from a trust standpoint. And so that was our light bulb. That was my light bulb. Took my spouse some convincing. But we've been pretty open about the contract with the school. At that point, we have a contract with the school, and this is how people help, and they're there to help and work with you. So we started consulting with him about his IEP in around 2nd grade, and his participation has grown since then. So he was 7. And then my younger son started actively participating in his meeting last year, and when he was 6 in 1st grade, because it was remote. So that was sort of a gift from the pandemic.
Thanks. Diana, when did your children start participating?
Well, my younger son, actually, the 5th grader, just began participating this year. And now he's transferring to a 504. So it's kind of like, whatever. But my older son, actually, when he was in 3rd grade, when he was beginning in kindergarten, I would tell him, we're going to be having a meeting, and we're going to be talking about you and how you learn in school. And there's going to be a group of us. And is there anything you want the team to know about you? And he would say things that, in my opinion, didn't really matter. I like cars, something like that. So when I went into the meeting, I was like, Quinn would like you all to know that he likes cars. But then when he was in 3rd grade, I had his teacher, he was in a separate class. Teacher was absolutely amazing. And she asked him, we're going to be having this meeting. I didn't know that she did this, but she's like, we're going to be having this meeting, and is there anything you want us to know? And he was like, I want to go. And she said, no. And but then he came, she didn't know that I always asked him about the meeting, what his thoughts were. And so I asked him, what do you want the team to know? And he said, I want to go. And I said, no. And then I thought about it, and I had just finished the leadership series the year before, or actually I think it was just a few months earlier. And I was like, why are you trying to stifle this kid? He wants to participate. He can participate. So I emailed the teacher the night before and said he will be participating in the meeting. And then he and I worked together on a prepared 2-sentence speech for him to say when he came down to the team. And we practiced it at home. And we went into the meeting. He came in at the very beginning of the meeting, and he said, he walked in and he looked at the group and froze. And I was like, do you need a minute? I said, I'll be right back. And he and I stepped out into the hallway, and I'm his biggest cheerleader. And I'm like, you can do this. I said, every single person in that room except for one. And that one person was my advocate. I said, everybody in that room, and that one person in that room that you don't know is there to help me, to help you. So you can do this. Come on, let's do this. And we went back into the room, and he and I, he stood right next to me. My hand was on his back, and I said, and he did what he needed to do. There was not a dry eye in the room when he was done, and he left. So he said he was never going to do that again. And I said, you did it once, you're going to keep doing this. We're not stopping now. And so he's participated in each meeting, and each year I try to get him to expand on what he says. And then last year, thanks to Melissa and her Facebook post about Mariah and the Google Slides, I said, because I was trying to come up with a way for him to participate a bit more. And so last year I said, let's do this Google Slide thing. And like Melissa, my Quinn is not somebody that you can just spring things on. So I started working with him a couple of weeks in advance, and he's a kid because of his language challenges. You can't ask him too many questions because he becomes overwhelmed. So like every day after school, I would ask him a question and I'd go write it down. And then, the next day I'd ask, what do you like about school? What don't you like about school? What do you want to be when you grow up? What do you want to do? And he's got a plan. And so I wrote it all down, and then I presented him with what I had written, and he and I worked together on the Google Slides, and he presented it in the meeting. And his teacher, he's in middle school now, and his special education teacher was amazing because he went over all of his slides. He read everything himself. And then after he was done, she went back and page by page asked him questions to expand on what he had already had on the slide. And it was amazing. So I'm hoping for the same thing again this year. What he wants, he's actually kind of already receiving because of their staffing shortage, which is more independence.
Thank
But it was
you.
all at his request. He basically self-advocated on his own.
Gosh, there's no better thing. That's awesome. Thank you, Diana.
Mm-hmm.
Marie, same question. How did you first come up with the idea for your child to participate?
So like you, Chase has had a IEP from the very beginning. He came from early intervention into an integrated preschool program and kindergarten, and just kept going from there. But like I said, Chase doesn't read, and he is, verbal, but partially. So we are very relational, and so we go by the strength, and I say we because apples don't fall far from trees, right? And my mother is on the team as well. So my mother taught me to make your teacher your best friend, because you leave your children with them 6, 7, 8 hours a day. So you need to have a really strong relationship with those people. And that's what we live by. So, our team is very familiar with us ongoing from kindergarten. I could go around town and people will know Chase from his teachers will still know and have relationship with us. So we build relationships. When I first had his IEP, when he was very young, I brought him into the room. He's very young, little, but I would line the conference table with pictures of Chase because I wanted people to know who we're talking about, right? So we're talking about a human. Also, I'm a caterer and an event planner. So I'd line the table with food and pictures of Chase. So that kind of set the atmosphere. But I guess I didn't know any better. I didn't know the rules. So I didn't know you couldn't bring your tribe with you. So to this day, we roll with a tribe. So our tribe is as big as theirs, and I have people that represent different parts of Chase's life, advocates and everybody from my mom, grandmother, to his cousins who have graduated in public health, getting masters in public health, or in the teaching field, my sister-in-law, medical professionals in the family. So I bring pieces of his life with us to all meetings, people in the community. And I never asked for permission. I never asked for permission to bring him. And I guess I didn't know better. I just do what I know, right? And I know that I'm relational, and I know how to throw a good party. So that's how we come together and we come into the room. And I tell Chase's story year round. So I'm constantly communicating and showing people who Chase is, and he's showing them through pictures, slides, videos, who he is and what his strengths are. Always.
Thank you. That's awesome. I like what you're saying there too, because we can think outside an IEP meeting, right? The team exists all year. So yeah, communicating with them often and finding ways for our kids to communicate with them and share with them. I just love that. I want to make sure we leave some time for some Q&A. We've gotten some questions already. So I'm going to jump to the final question for our panelists, if that's okay. And if you want to kind of go back and forth between the third and fourth questions, that's fine. We do want to know a little bit about how your kids have participated and what suggestions you have for the rest of us. Like, how could we include our children in IEP meetings? We've got some parents here with kindergartners, right? Some parents here whose kids are not verbal. So what has worked for you? What suggestions do you have for these families? And Amanda, we'll go back to you.
Sure, thanks. So they both have input into their vision statements. That's one of the main things, and they love doing that. My younger son wants to live at home and to be a volcanologist, and we haven't broken it to him yet that there are no volcanoes in Massachusetts. There's time. But so they're part of that conversation around their vision. We always run through the accommodations with them. Is this working? Is this something that you're using, or would you like to try something different? I will say, it's one thing for us to sit there and talk about percentiles and gaps, and it's another thing to have this little voice in the meeting on Zoom say, I have a hard time keeping all the words in my head. It makes me really sad when I can't say what I want to say. They all stop and they listen, and then we can talk with him about what's going to work. Okay, well, what if we tried this instead? So it really cuts through all of us at the table when we're not being heard. My older son isn't really comfortable participating in person right now. He's 11 and he's too cool for that. So we tend to interview him and record it with his permission, usually over ice cream. What's working, what would you like to change? And then we're able to play that for the team to help inform the conversation. One thing is that we do treat it like a process. It's not a one-off. So we had his annual meeting this week, and they came up with a plan that he would do a check-in with a para right after recess. And we said, he's not going to want to do that. He does not want to be last in lunch line. He's not going to want to have that conversation with them. They politely blew us off. So I came home and told him this plan, and he was horrified. So you, sir, are going to email the team and tell them this. So he typed up the email, and then we got the call. Do you know that he sent us this email? Mm-hmm. Do you mind if we talk to him and see if we can work through his concerns? Please talk to him. So one of my suggestions is always encourage the team to talk to them throughout the year. Ask them for their input. We're normalizing this for the adults as much as we are for the kids. We're conditioning the adults too, to shift their lens, that it's not about their convenience, that there is this tiny human at the center of all of this. So it was really great to be able to have that exchange. And we also, look for other ways for them to advocate for themselves throughout the year. So whether it's a clinic meeting and, my son's like, I don't like when the pizza's the wrong shape. Great, that's still you're expressing your preference, right? But it's also finding them opportunities throughout the year to get them comfortable and then be able to generalize it in that big, high stakes, to me anyway, environment. It's more normalized for them to just be able to speak up and say, this is what I like, this is what I don't.
Thank you. Wow, so powerful. Diana.
Well, I actually I guess I jumped ahead when I was speaking before, and that fact that, we started with, first me just talking to him not being in the meeting, but me being his voice. And then in third grade, when he self-advocated to participate in the meeting with just a prepared speech. And we did that in third, fourth, fifth, and sixth grade. And then in seventh grade is when we did the Google Slides. And, I'm just hoping, I'm always looking for more. So, I'll try to figure out what else, how he can, he's 14 now. I don't remember, but I think this is the big year when they're supposed to be attending, I think. I don't know, but it doesn't matter to me because he's already there.
Love that. And yeah, it is legally 14 when they start inviting our children. But yes, I think our point tonight is that they should be able to go and they can go anytime. You were kind of mentioning that earlier, Marie, too, when you said you bring your tribe. And I just want to say we are allowed to bring who we'd like to our IEP meetings. So keep that up. Yeah. So Marie, same question. What advice do you have for parents or suggestions about how they could include their kids?
Yeah, so like you said, everybody's child is at a different stage. You have different verbal skills and different medical needs and such. So know your own child and know what is comfortable for them. If it makes sense to bring them physically in the room, bring them. If it doesn't make sense to do that while you're trying to take care of business. But just whatever way you choose to do it, make sure that they know that they're talking about a human being, right? That is has goals and is loved, right? So I think that's the first thing. You know, we love our child and we value our child and we want the best for our child, right? So that's the first thing they need to know. You know, I knew that my plan is working when the pandemic hit and the specialist came to my home, even when schools were locked down and they said they couldn't come. You know, don't tell, but we're coming here. And they came through the summer and they taught him and, you know, continued with our family. So you want to build relationships. And there, even when you build relationships, things could go south, and they have with me, because when they need to, that bottom line, right, that money or whatever bottom line they have, they're going to stick to it. And a lot of your paraprofessionals are going to become silent because they're fearing for their positions and jobs. But continue to fight for the needs of your children. And what worked for me is having a relationship with somebody at DESE that I can pick up the phone. So when someone says no, I pick up the phone and there's someone on the other end saying yes, right? That will call and intercede for me. So those relationships are important. And what I mean by that is knowing what your rights are, you know, knowing how to advocate for yourself and for your child. And you learn that in the leadership series, you learn that in CPAC meetings, you learn that by intuition, right? When something doesn't feel right, or if it's not right for you and your child, then it's not right, right? And sometimes what you have to do is be creative and think outside the box and take everybody outside the box with you. But I learned a lot tonight, and those communication skills that all you guys have is just amazing. And I will implement some of those tools as well, you know. But you know, to what we're, I mean, he might have to sing a song, you know, just take his guitar and sing, or his drum, or what have you. But they come to our drum circle, you know, the teachers, the parents, the specialists are here within the drum circle. So it's just important that they know who he is and what he likes, and we like to show. So that IEP is coming with me outside the school.
Yeah, thank you so much. I love that idea too, just the pervasiveness of the team, right? And involving them throughout the year, in and out of school as much as we can. I love that. Thank you. Thank you. All right, I'm going to turn, I know we've got about 5 minutes remaining, so I'm going to just turn to some questions in the chat. The first one that we received was, how do we include a child who is minimally verbal, and at what age? You can include them at any age. And I think it's, you know, up to the family, of course, how to do that. But yeah, I don't know if any of you panelists want to reply to that question in particular about a minimally verbal and or young child, if you have any particular thoughts or suggestions. Okay, yeah, oh, go ahead, Mary, thank you.
Like, I mean, I have one, so everything that I was saying is that, you know, there's other means to communicate. So find ways to communicate with pictures. Take pictures of what you do. We have video now, so take those videos with you. There's just other ways to communicate. They communicate with your child every day when the child's at school. So that is communication. You know, just be creative and allow that child to speak through what they love, what reflects them.
Yeah, I'm reminded too of what you were saying earlier, Amanda, about the individual who didn't realize that there was this whole group of people talking about him all the time, right? Until he was 14 and invited to attend. And just keeping that in mind, I think will help you to feel out when is a good age for, because we're doing this as much for our kids as for training the adults in their room, right? But when it is a good age for your kids to start realizing, oh, we are, you know, there's this team of people around you and they're meeting to make decisions about you and you should be a part of that. So, but yeah, thank you for those good suggestions. We got another question here that I think is a really interesting one, which is, you know, now lots of these IEP meetings are virtual because of the pandemic and they get scheduled during the school day. So parents are doing the IEP meeting sometimes from their work environments, whether that's working at home or whatnot. So how do we involve our children in that case? Do we keep them at home so they participate with us? My first thought is have them participate from school. So that, yeah, okay, so that they don't have to stay home. So, you know, say to the teacher, this is what they're bringing. We want them to, you know, be with you in the room. They don't have to stay. I should have said this. They don't have to stay for the whole meeting either. My daughter has never stayed for a whole meeting unless she just decides she wants to like hang on me and hug me for half an hour while I'm chatting. But otherwise they, you know, they don't need to stay the whole time. Anyway, I don't think we should necessarily expect them to unless that's something they want to do. But I think even if they can start, we always have our daughter start the meeting. She goes first, she speaks first, she leads, partly so she doesn't get bored and just walk out, but also I think to center her voice, right? She gets to say things first. So that would be my thought, is to ask the team to include the child from school on Zoom. I don't know if, Amanda, I saw you nodding. I don't know if you had anything you
I
wanted
saw
to.
Diana raise her hand.
Oh, sorry, Diana, I missed it. You have to wave.
That's totally
Thank
fine. I
you.
actually ran into this year with my younger son who decided he was going to participate in the meeting. And I messaged the liaison and said that, you know, he would be participating. And I actually got a phone call, shockingly, from the school psychologist asking my reasoning for including him in the doggone meeting. I was like, what? And then she's like, oh, this hasn't happened before. Now I'm being gaslit because when my oldest son began participating in his meetings when he was in the 3rd grade. And now you're telling me that this never happens? And yes, I did dismiss him from school so that he could come home and participate in the meeting via Zoom because I was not leaving him without his support person. Is why, and that was my reasoning, was because I'm not, because that was the other thing that she said was, well, you can, you know, he can go into the room with the special education teacher and participate from there. And I said, absolutely not. He's going to be with me, the person that I know for sure has his back 100%.
Yeah, maybe some kids wouldn't participate if they weren't with us. You know, it just depends on the kiddo. Were you going to add, Amanda?
No, I think that's pretty fair. I think too that just having the team there and seeing where they are at the time, but we haven't kept them home for that, but they've just happened to be home for various reasons. So that has been nice with the remote, but I try to respect, you know, if we need to record him ahead of time rather than have him there, that's okay too.
Yeah. Excellent. Thank you. Somebody just wanted to clarify that a kindergartner can join the IEP meeting, even if briefly. Yes, yes, yes. Pre-K, yes. Love that. And then we got a question here. How do you deal with the school when the older the child gets, the further they fall behind? When the school now exclusively separates, when they used to be inclusive with the unified arts? And how do you get the school to include when the students, I assume special ed students, are put in the basement of the school and seldom leave the room? This sounds to me like an OCR complaint. I don't know about anyone else. I will just say from my teaching experience, when something like this happened in the district in which I used to teach, the Office of Civil Rights, that's what I mean by OCR, became involved. And I will say those children were moved very quickly out of the basement, as they should have not ever been down there. But I would definitely maybe use some of the reporting processes. I can post some of those things, or if you have it at your fingertips, the places to report via DESE and elsewhere, and want to post that in the chat for this parent. That may be helpful, because there are places that you can and should let the state know if you're seeing things that feel like segregation, and you should use that language that you feel your child is being segregated. Yeah, that doesn't sound good. I don't know if anybody else wants to comment. I know it's not quite on topic for
I have way more than 30 seconds to say on that one. So.
You sure, Amanda? Go ahead. Well, reach out to, yeah, you can reach out to Amanda on that too. And yes, you can look up, there's a Massachusetts Office of Civil Rights. Hold on, I've got that one here. And then I'm thinking about a couple others as well. So I'll post them in the chat. Anne Marie, I see that you want to speak up. And yeah, I want to say, just for in the interest of time, that we're now a little past 8 o'clock. So please feel free to leave at any time. We want to be true to your time, and to my panelists as well. Let me formally thank you before anyone leaves, and also say to you that you are under no obligation to stay. I can stay for a little bit longer to answer folks' questions, but please don't feel you have to. We asked for an hour of your time and you gave it graciously, and we're truly appreciative of your time and your expertise, and you just sharing so openly about your families and your kids. So thank you. Anne Marie, I think you had a question and wanted to unmute, so feel free.
Hi, nice. Thank you for this wonderful webinar. I've learned a lot, and I wish I would have attended it at the beginning of the school year. My question is, I feel like because I didn't have all these wonderful tips, I went to IEPs alone. I didn't include my child, although I would report on things he said. I could have videotaped him. I could have included him in the meetings. I could have brought more support people with me. I was my first time with an adversarial situation. I decided to homeschool him. And for this year, I'm feeling like that was the better option, and then to search other schools. And I just wonder, from all of your experience, if I use these tools that I'm learning, or these approaches and strategies I'm learning from you all tonight, if it's worth trying to use them with the school that he was at, or should I just close a chapter on that one and use them at the new school? I wonder if, when you have adversarial situation with schools, if you ever have, any of you, if you feel like they can ever be repaired through the IEP meeting process, or if it's just kind of like better to move on.
We're all thinking. And Marie, this is such a big question, and I think strikes at the heart for so many of us. So just do any of our panelists? Thanks, Amanda.
I think one related thing that comes to mind is, I think that even when we do move on, we still hold on to the bad experience, and we carry that with us to the new team. And it's very hard to walk into the new team and set it aside and realize, okay, this is a fresh start for all of us. And so one thing that I always try to do in that situation is I honor that. I say, you know what, we've had a bad experience before, and I'm coming in and I'm holding this tension. I just name it. I'm coming in and I'm a little bit tense right now. But we really are glad you're all here to collaborate with us today and move forward. Let's work together on his behalf. So I think sometimes it's also letting go of the past if we do move on. So I would just throw that in there as a suggestion, regardless of which path you end up taking.
Thanks,
Diana.
Amanda. Nice to see you.
I just want to say, you need to decide for yourself, like, do you want to continue a battle, which is sometimes worth it, or not? I have been in that situation where it did become adversarial. We were able to work through it, and we have not changed schools. I mean, he's in a different school now only because he's in the middle school versus the elementary school. But it has, yeah, as Amanda said, you don't forget. And I know who did me wrong, but we were able to work through, and he was able to get what it was that he needed. Unfortunately, my situation at the time was we were not yet aware of how much support he was truly needing at the time, due to some of his behaviors and whatnot, due to the pandas, which is another whole ball of wax. But you just need to figure out, like, can they service him and give him what it is that he needs where he is? And are you willing, do you want to have the battle that it would take?
Yeah, thank you for that, Diana. I'm trying to think through my experience. So throughout our IEP processes with our kids, we've worked with 6 different school districts. I was sitting here counting on fingers. And yes, we've definitely had some adversarial moments. I think things sometimes can be repaired. I agree with Amanda that I have found I'm usually the one that needs to be humble first. And if I kind of do that first, then that kind of opens the door, right? Because, and I'm in this unique position. I was a high school teacher for years, and I'm now a professor of education. So I've been on both sides of the team, and I was a school district administrator as well. So I know what it's like to sit on the other side of the table as an administrator, as a teacher, and now as a parent, right? And we're all, I will say, for the most part, everybody's really truly doing the best they can. That doesn't mean they know what they should know. It doesn't mean, they know how to meet my kids' needs and have the creative skills and the understanding in terms of like what the disability is and so on. But I will say there more than one occasion that I have kind of lost my cool, I'll say it that way, in an IEP meeting. I tend to be very strong personality. And because I'm an educator, I know things, right? So I want it done, and I want it done correctly. And I've had to be the first one to say, even though I still believe in what I said, the way I said it was terrible. And I wish I hadn't spoken that way. Can we start over? I'm sorry. And that has on multiple times just kind of opened the door again to okay, Melissa can be a little bit hard-nosed, but in good news, she's willing to admit when she, and tries to make amends, because we're not perfect. And sometimes I think too, we need to remember the people at the table aren't perfect either. We feel like as parents, we don't know everything we wish we knew. And you know what? Sometimes they feel that way too. And sometimes if we can all just stop covering it up, oh, I feel nervous and I feel scared and I feel like I don't know enough. If we could all just say, we don't really know what to do in this situation, right? How can we figure that out together? Sometimes that'll open a door. It's hard to know. Obviously, we can't tell you it within your particular situation, but just to say, I resonate with what you say and wish you the best. And I think I'm echoing Amanda here that there's actually research on this that as parents, I'll just say this quickly, last thing, as parents, we tend to take our own schooling experiences into school with us when we meet with teachers. And if we've had negative school experiences, or I would say I'm adding to the research, but negative previous IEPs experiences with our kids or whatever, they really do. There's some really interesting research on that and how negatively that can affect our interactions with other educators. So, so yeah, it takes a great deal, I think, of introspection and care. But my heart goes out to you because I know how painful that is and how badly we want the best, best, best for our kids, you know, and how we would give anything, right? I will give up every relationship in this room if you all would just get on board, right? It's so my heart just goes out to you because I know it's easier, much easier said than done.
Thank you. Yes, I really appreciate the advice from you and Amanda and Diana and the time you've taken to advise me.
Yeah, we're still here. So are there any other questions? I don't see any others in the chat, but if anybody else wants to unmute or say something, we'll hang out for another minute, or I will hang out. I'm not going to speak for my panelists, but I guess I mean my spouse and I'm speaking for my spouse, poor guy. I know Marie had to leave, so. Does anyone else have?
Yeah, I just wanted to follow up on what you said, Melissa, though, about the confidence that it gives our kids when they're able to have that experience and then carry it elsewhere. And I know just from having the ability to speak up in those situations, my guys were able to go independently without my prompting to their speech pathologist this year and ask for their pullouts to be rescheduled because they didn't want to miss the subject in the classroom. And they felt comfortable, and she was ready to listen to them. So I think that just building that confidence is so, so lovely. I see someone has a question.
Rachel, yeah, thanks, Amanda. I love that. Oh my goodness, what a dream.
How are you, my dear? Good to
Hi,
see
Rachel.
you. It's so nice to see everybody. Thank you so much for doing this. So I guess I realized that the time has come with my twins that it's their time now. I think with the last 2 years with COVID, we just kind of got through all the IEPs that we needed to for each of them. So no time like the present. What can you advise and how can you advise a mom who is not very tech savvy at all? The simplest way, if we wanted to do some kind of video or put things, or like just take photos and put them into some kind of video, what can you recommend that's not going to go over my head?
Oh, thank you for that question, Rachel. I love that. Because you're not the only one, you know. So it occurs to me, Zoom. I mean, you got on Zoom tonight. Do you have your own Zoom account or?
Yes.
Yeah? Okay. So if your kid gets on Zoom all by themselves, they can just hit the record button and record themselves talking. And that video will save to your computer or sometimes somewhere else, depending on where you put it. But that's an idea.
So you can record, they can record right on Zoom, right? Can record on Zoom. Okay.
Yeah. So even that little video you saw of Mariah, she was doing exactly what I'm doing tonight. She was showing her slides but on Zoom as if she were presenting to this big audience out there, but there was nobody else on there but her. She got into Zoom, shared her screen, and recorded herself. But yeah, you don't, even if without a slideshow, right? Just get on and click record and you're just talking to the camera and saying, hi, I'm so-and-so, and this is what I like about school, or this is what I don't like about school. Amanda and Diana, do you have other thoughts?
Diana's shaking her head no. I think for us too, I mean, I just record them on my phone. Just put it face down and then just record and just have a casual conversation with them. So if he doesn't want to sit and look at himself, that's too much sometimes. I know that some kids also just prepare like a poster or a poster board, or even, without the tech, and then we can just share it in the meeting or make a slideshow of it. So we've done it that way too at times for smaller projects, not necessarily a big meeting, but sometimes I upload things onto YouTube too, and then just make it private, so that only people who have the link can view it. And then I send it either ahead of the meeting so that we all have it to discuss, or I can send it in the chat there and they can watch it during the meeting. So I've used YouTube too with the privacy settings.
And so you can do it on YouTube and save it. Did you just say save it? Like
So
it's
I yeah, I record it on my phone sometimes, and then I'll upload it to YouTube and then just change the privacy settings. So that would be even more low tech than using Zoom.
Thank you. So I know that the IEP is going to be within the next month, and I don't know if the school is going to allow an option then for in-person. Who knows where we're going to be? With that, we've done well with the Zoom meeting, but someone asked earlier about, with their child, it's best to have them stay in school and be in school and, go down to the meeting. So that's the only thing I'm a little, if we are doing this on Zoom still, it's going to take the coordination of the people at school to do all this, right? To get the student out of the class and make sure that they're in front of the laptop. Amanda, you look like you're smiling and laughing under there for some reason.
Never any harm in asking. Make them say no. They won't. They'll make it work.
Okay, great. There's only so much that parents can do. And I think it's understanding that we've done all that we can on our end. And it's nice when you can push it back to the school and be like, this is what is needed. Go for it.
I know in my district, because of what, because of my, oh, I see your hand too, Alanya, I'll be right with you. But because of what Mariah's been doing, they've been talking about how can they help their special ed teachers to help more students participate and have that be something that they do in school to prepare for their own IEP meetings. So definitely something you could suggest. When this idea was run by me, I said, I'm not a special ed teacher, but I don't think I could take on helping every kid prepare for their IEP meeting, plus preparing all the IEPs. But like, I think about everything a special ed teacher already does, and I'm like, oh my. But I think if we send something in and said, hey, can they, I think we could work together and get it done for sure. Yeah. And I'm sorry, I saw a hand. Can you tell me how to pronounce your name? Is it Alanya?
It's actually Lada. It's my daughter's Zoom. So,
oh, okay. Lovely.
I have a question. Are there ever parts of the discussion during the IEP meetings that you'd rather it's best for your child not to hear? And if so, how do you manage like your kid starting the meeting, let's say, and then having your child leave or something? That's and then having them feel good about having them feel okay about leaving the meeting, because they'll be, I don't know, I think maybe you know what I'm talking about. Thank you.
Yeah, Diana, I saw emphatic nods. Do you want
Actually, that's exactly what we have done with my son. Is he comes in at the beginning of the meeting, he says what he needs to say, and then he would go right back to class. And he was totally fine with that. It was only in 7th grade that he had that bigger participation. And even still, when it came time to like review, he still only participated in that beginning piece where he gave his presentation. The teacher went back and reviewed and teased some more information out of him. And then he was all set, and he was still remote at that time. So he just left the room and went on to do whatever he needed to do. And he was, every child is different. He was totally fine. He is totally fine. Words, as I said before, language is not his thing. So too many words he just gets confused. And so, yeah, he says what he needs to say and then he's gone. But every child is different.
I feel that way about some of the evaluations and data, because I don't necessarily want my kid to take in their IQ score or their, like collecting data on how many times she's, been physically hurt someone in school, right? And we're collecting data to make sure that's getting better over time. But I don't want her to listen to like, oh, well, last week you only hit someone X number, like just that. It's just, I think, very sensitive, right? To kind of how can we make sure the IEP meeting is a place that they feel like is a positive place for them. And even though I need to know that data as a parent, I'm not sure what good it would do her to like be reminded of her mistakes, right? Mistakes. So yeah.
For my son, we bridged it because he wanted to know what we were going to talk about after he left. And so they gave him an opening, and that his teacher and his special educator said, well, let's come up with an objective for writing. Let's sit down and talk about an objective for writing. So they're going to come up with an objective with him. And then the speech pathologist is going to talk to him about a social skills objective and how he can help, figure out the data. So they're going to include him in those tiny ways. And then he was like, okay, he could take that. That was going to be his role. That's what we're going to talk about. And he was good. So it was sort of giving him a little glimpse into the rest of the conversation and letting him have a little bit of input in a small bites. But you're right. I think having them there keeps it strengths-based. It forces us to talk from a strengths-based perspective, right? But at some point, we do have to talk about where we need to focus next and where we need to grow. And so it's having that gentle exit point for some of them is nice.
Amanda, while you're unmuted, could you elaborate? You were writing in the chat that we could make participating in the IEP an IEP objective, which I love this idea.
I'm surprised none of us mentioned it, but
I know, me either.
It's like, oh yeah, we can have a self-advocacy goal. I love wending self-advocacy into every goal area. So every goal we try to have some piece of self-advocacy, but having an objective for them to speak up in a meeting, prepare that presentation, be able to share their thoughts, however that looks, right? If we have verbal, nonverbal, et cetera. But to have an objective for them to become active participants. And I think it's especially important when we do hit that legal transition age, right? That should be part of the transition plan. But even thinking about a little bit younger, how do we get them to self-advocate in this way? And maybe this is one way for them to do that.
I love that. Then it becomes something that has to be worked on in school. Very interesting. All right. Well, you have just been so lovely to stay all this extra time. We really appreciate your time. And thank you again to my panelists. Thanks, Donna. And thanks to all of you for coming this evening. Please reach out if you've got other questions. If you are not on our email list at Inclusion Matters, please send me an email and I'll be happy to add you. We do send out notification about our events and stuff so that you can stay up with the email again in the chat so that you can stay updated. And thank you again to our panelists. Thank you all. We hope you have a great night.